Welcome to episode 212, How to Break Through Limiting Beliefs, Release Control, and Live Free with John Kempf. Welcome to the Be That 1% podcast. I'm your host, James Silvis, mindset specialist and performance coach. And here on the show, I'm going to challenge you to think deeper, commit to greatness, and develop a stronger mindset. You'll hear stories from those who are living life on their terms, and you'll receive strategies that will help you level up. So the question is, are you ready to be your own 1%? Let's get started. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Be That 1% podcast. We are on season 5. Kind of crazy to think that this has been in the 5th year of the podcast, and we are over 200 episodes, 70 plus countries, and continuing the impact. As I continue to search for amazing individuals, John is actually the person that comes to mind, and him and I had a chance to connect in person recently through our trip to Peru on warrior retreats, which we'll definitely get into. But one of the best things that I love about John is he's so wise in a lot of different areas of life. Like he's one of the best conversationalists that I've had the honor of connecting with, because he knows so much about a lot of the things that I'm passionate about. So him and I were roommates going down into Peru. We've experienced some things that were very, very similar, which I'm sure we'll get into. But John is an online personal trainer. He's the owner of Kempf Fitness Professional. That's his own business and brand that he's built. And he helps people with their health, their mindset, using nutrition, exercise, mindfulness, yoga, and most importantly, presence. And presence is something that I care deeply about, being that it's my number one value. And I think it's the best gift that you can gift somebody else. It's also one of the most challenging things to cultivate, just given the way the mind is. So without further ado, I can't wait to dive into this conversation. John, welcome to the podcast, brother.
Thanks for having me, buddy. I'm really excited. It'll be a good recap on Warriors, and it'll be nice to go into the rabbit holes with you.
Yeah, man, let's do it. So let's start off with just a little back history on who you are, how you got into this, and how you think about things.
Yeah, absolutely. I apologize if I sound a little nasally. I'm just getting over a head cold, but I always was really interested in movement and athletics as a kid, and that evolved into a passion for kinesiology, the study of movement in college. Just a funny story. I actually remember the first, year and a half of college, being a freshman and undecided in my major. First generation college student, had no idea about anything related to what I was doing there. And I remember seeing a flyer randomly in the library one day, which was probably a pretty rare occasion for me freshman year. But the flyer was just like this 1-page write-up on kinesiology, the study of human movement. And just the explanation of the classes that it was talking about and the subject matter, I was like, oh my God, this major exists. I had no idea. So I enrolled right away, and that really started to satisfy my curiosity about how human movement and how learning are so interconnected, and how optimizing the function of your human vessel, the body and the mind, the better chance you have going out in the real world and being successful at whatever else you want to do. The kind of tier system that you would look at from the movement perspective, I got this from Ido Portal. At the first tier, we're all humans, which means we all have the same anatomy and physiology, bone structure. Our hearts all work the same, for example. The layout of the human organism itself, the default hardware is relatively the same, and it has certain parameters that you want to follow to optimize function and minimize risk of disease or injury. And so that kind of physical perspective of how the human organism works is then followed by movement. We all have joints that move through certain ranges of motion, hip extension, and we walk and run in certain similar fashions. There's primal archetypical movement patterns like a hinge, a squat, a push, a pull, a twist. So we all perform these movements. And then in the third tier is the specialization of whatever you do as a human being. So the, kind of organizational structure of that helps when you're thinking about how the human organism behaves in the environment, depending on if it's a stressful situation or whatever, that person is going to react in a certain way in those tiers. And so just it really fascinated me of how movement and learning are so connected, and how, you can actually optimize the management of your human organism and then optimize whatever else you want to specialize in, your productivity at work or your athletic performance on the field. It doesn't matter. If you improve the human function, everything else that you do as a human will improve because the human organism is functioning better. So that just whole like mind, body, human optimization conversation was really interesting to me, coming from the athletic background and wanting to, maximize my strength and my performance and speed and all those variables, and just learning how, like mobility work, for example, is something that actually will help you reduce injury risk, move more efficiently, create more force because you're moving more efficiently, economic efficiency there. So all of those things were related to the physical performance that I was focused on at a younger age. And then as the studies went on, I minored in psychology as well. So it's just a lot about the mind and behavior. And it was just like the perfect combination of body mind for me to learn about how humans think and the behavior. And then like taking the anatomy classes and, making all of these correlations between the mind and the body and how they're interconnected. They're not separate. And there's a beautiful parable. I won't go too far off the rails with it, but it's an old parable about the human organism, and it's 5 horses and the rider and the person in the carriage. And it's kind of a breakdown of the body, the mind, and the soul. And the body is the 5 horses, the 5 senses that drive the physical carriage. The mind is the driver who has the reins in his hands, and the mind, when trained and disciplined, can use the reins skillfully to guide the body where it wants to go. But if it isn't trained, if the mind's not trained, then the horses will just take the carriage wherever they want to go. You'll be following your sensate pleasures and running away from your sensate fears or pains your whole life. And then a lot of the techniques, like we'll get into deeper about yoga, are really realizing that you are not your body and you are not your mind. They are just constructs that you use to navigate the physical material world. And the essence of who you are as an individualized aspect of the universal cosmic consciousness, the rider in the carriage, the soul that you are, actually is who can give direction to the driver and say, hey, I want you to go here. So it's being led by the higher desire, the inner being, the heart, whatever that symbol is for you, of connecting to your higher self or to a higher intelligence.
I love that. I like the carriage idea. I've always heard of the horses and the rider, but the carriage edition of the soul, I like that. That makes it much more vivid.
So, there's even more to that parable. It's beautiful.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you, brother. I appreciate the way that you think and how disciplined you are in understanding us as human beings and what we can do, and really sharpening our power, our potency, our precision. So we had connected through our mutual friend, Brandon, years ago, but for whatever reason, we just kind of, didn't get to connect. And recently through Warrior Retreats in December, late November into early December, for 14 days, you and I went on an exploration of all aspects of our mind, body, and soul, from food poisoning to being on my deathbed, metaphorically, to your injury. And so biggest takeaways I guess we'll kind of get into, but Peru, for those of you who have never been, is a magical land. It always gives you what you need. And Warrior Retreat specifically was created by Brandon, and I've been fortunate to be a facilitator the last couple of years. And really, it's one of the greatest leadership retreats on the planet. And you go through 4 different containers. You stay in the jungles for 4 days off grid. You move from there to Cusco, 11,000 plus feet elevation. From there, you go to Machu Picchu, and then you finish in Sacred Valley at this beautiful resort called Samadhi. And each container has different medicine for you. And you're also navigating, what is coming up in each of these locations. And so John and I were constantly debriefing on the downloads and epiphanies and the thoughts that were coming up. And so, John, I want to just throw it to you, brother, and see, start wherever you want, but talk to us about what you learned and what what you went through. I know that's a loaded question that could take us like probably 3 days to talk about, but do your best.
Sure. I'll close the last loop very quickly just by saying, I worked in college as a strength and conditioning assistant and a personal trainer. And then following college, I started teaching yoga and practicing and learning about yoga in 2013. And fast forward to 2018, that's actually where I met Brandon on a yoga trip that we went on together, randomly happened to meet there in 2018. And that's how I fell into the Warrior Retreats. And it's just been something as a timing that has come up. And this last year, it just worked out. So got the pleasure of connecting with James in person for the first time. And another group, there was 24 of us, I believe, in total.
Mm-hmm.
So, another 23 other people like us, and just leaders, really, really good people, really, really good energy. One reflection to note that is something that definitely came up throughout the retreat is the hand selection process was so appreciated from like a cleanliness perspective. Like everybody was very conducive. The group was like very cohesive.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody was on the same page, very good alignment and just ease of navigation with these 24 other people. Because running retreats myself, 24 especially for 2 weeks in multiple containers when you're traveling, that's a lot of people to manage in a foreign country where English is not the primary language. There's just so many moving parts there. For it to have gone as smoothly as it did, that's just a testament to Brandon, hats off, buddy, and also to the rest of you facilitators for just putting together such an incredible experience. So that was just something that, marked gratitude there to you guys. Really well done. Let's see. Iquitos, coming in to Iquitos was really cool. The first night the first morning, I should say, I thought James, we bunked together the first night in the hotel, and I thought he was shaking my bed in the morning to wake me up, but it was actually an earthquake. So the first day there, Peru greeted us with a seismic earthquake. It was like north up from us a ways, but rattled the hotel building for like 30 seconds. So that's how we started it off, which I thought was a good sign. And the jungles were incredible. James, I was just looking back 2 days ago, maybe, on footage from that I had taken from us coming up the tributary to the resort center or to the lodge. And just the green blanket on top of the Amazon River of the life of plants that just is like a carpet on the water of like little floating lily pads or whatever they are, just tons of different plant life. Just so rich, man. It's so beautiful. But the jungles were an incredible experience. It was so tucked into a pocket of nature. It was just so raw, so natural, as corny as the word is. It was just so perfect. And that alone for the nervous system is so healing, rejuvenating, just a total parasympathetic reset. Being out there, no Wi-Fi, no blue light, no nothing, you're just out in the sticks. And that was really beautiful, especially living out here on Maui. I really appreciate that kind of just really lush green tropical nature vibe. It's one of my favorite things about living out here as well. So that was beautiful to see.
Mm-hmm.
And Wolf, man, Wolf, one of the guides, is just heart-centered, super wonderful human. And that I'm sure you'll touch on the story, the trusted plants. That was one of my favorites, man. And so yeah, we went from the jungles to Cusco. It got its own vibe, beautiful place, cobblestone streets, and narrow streets with lots of little shops, and it's got plazas and really cool kind of just like vibe there to go cruise around and play tourist.
Yeah.
Machu Picchu was one of my favorites.
Yep.
Absolutely. Just the mountain energy was so incredible. Rainbow Mountain as well. And then we finished in Sacred Valley, where we stayed for the last week. And I actually ended up staying a week longer because on one of the last events we had, a four-wheeling event, I had an accident and broke my arm, and ended up having to have surgery in Peru, which I had to stay an extra few days in the hospital, and then stayed at the retreat center before I flew out. So it was just like a crazy turn of events there at the end.
Which, if that happened to anybody else, I don't know how they would have reacted, but the way that you reacted to all of that, being in a foreign country, breaking your wrist and your arm like that you were just so zen the whole entire time. So I have a few questions on that, but I'll preface that question by asking the audience who's listening, how comfortable are you when things don't go your way? If you're laughing while I'm asking that question, the chances are you struggle with that, like most people. And what I figured out, more so recently, especially as a parent, you have ideas of how your day is going to go, maybe even how your life's going to go. And oftentimes, well, actually 99% of the time, it never goes according to plan. And one of my biggest intentions going to Peru was to rid myself, or at least severely minimize my attachment to identities, attachment to superficial things, attachments to how my life needs to play out, and instead surrender that control and really focus on presence and adaptability. That when you get into the current and you fight the current, not only are you wasting so much energy, but you're not allowing the power of the water to carry you to a destination. You're not leveraging that life force that's coming through you. And so we can get in our own way. We can create bottlenecks. We can block emotions and mental thoughts that can take us to our next level. And I highly doubt that John had it in his forecast that he was going to break his arm. And then we were met with that situation. So, John, what were you thinking initially as soon as it happened? And what was kind of the theme that you kept coming back to as you stayed that extra week, had to pay that money, had to, handle all of the, details of what happens when you're just not in the States? Talk us through that.
Well, first of all, I'm gonna come back to that because it's the perfect tie-in, but I just wanted to actually follow up with something that you had said that is a parable that I love, and I believe that this is a key piece to it. When people talk about this is very common. If anybody's heard of Abraham Hicks, she talks a lot about the swimming upstream or downstream. The path of least resistance is allowing the current to take you downstream instead of, trying to fight and force something that just doesn't feel right. And you're just swimming up current, not going anywhere, wasting your energy. And there's such a debate in this conversation of people that are like, grind, just fucking crush it, excuse my language, and, get it done. And then you've got the other group, and they're the people that are like, the law of attraction is BS. And then you've got the people that are like, I'm just going to sit here and wish and hope and pray that it happens, but I'm not going to do anything because I don't want to create resistance. And those people are like, oh, working hard is like, any hard work is bad, and going against the stream, everything should be easy. And I think there's a perfect middle ground here in the kind of, the visual that I get with this story is it's not about swimming upstream, and it's not about just back floating down the current. It's about maintaining presence. Of course, we're going to go there while you're going down the stream. So you're just treading water. You're not actually doing anything. Non-action, as they would call it in Taoism, where the path of least resistance, easy is right. You're going in the right direction. You should be able to go with the flow. But if you're aware of your surroundings, 50 feet down the river, you see that there's a giant boulder, right? You're going to run right into it. It's not about swimming up the stream or just surrendering and then getting smashed by the boulder and like just having to learn that lesson, I guess, because it's faded. The practice of presence, all these skills and tools to me are the ways in which you can navigate downstream. So you just swim one pace to the left. It takes very little effort. You kick one arm and one leg and you move 6 feet to the left and you avoid the boulder, but you spent zero or minimal energy. It's not about doing nothing, just the thing that costs the least amount of energy and gets you still to where you want to go. So a lot of these tools and techniques and practices like breath work and all this mind body stuff, which I really do want to go into because of the fascination I have with it, they're all opportunities to focus your attention on something or nothing if you're really going down the meditation rabbit hole, but it's still focusing your attention, one pointed focus, which is one of the 8 limbs of yoga. It's one of the steps in teaching you how to get to the end of the rainbow, if you will, in the meditation tradition, where you become no one, or become everyone, you become everything in that sense. Non-dual state of thought where you just are existing. There is no identity. It's a dissolution of ego, dissolution of self. So the one pointed focus is the action step on the way to that place. And even if you don't get to that place, that may not be practical for everybody to go meditate in a cave for 5 years and become enlightened. It's not about that. It's about practicing one pointed focus on whatever you're doing, which is just being fully present and engaged and aware of the present moment, no matter what you're doing in that present moment. And so all of the things that you learn on a spiritual path, for the most part, are ways to practice being present, ways to focus all of your attention on one thing or nothing at a given time. So that way you can achieve the benefits of what that action elicits, more engagement with your partner, or more BDNF in the brain, however you want to look at it, physiological, relational, career development, focus and flow state, increased productivity. Doesn't matter what the way that you practice presence, do it the way you like to do it, whether it's painting, going for a walk, or practicing yoga or qigong, as long as you're fully there in the moment. When you're sweeping the house, doing the dishes, can you be fully aware of and in that present moment? Because then when shit hits the fan, you're not worried about the past and the future. And when I broke my arm, I mean, all the things come up, of course, the kid in the back seat that's like, are we there yet? What about this? What about that? Well, this is, and you just have to detach from that. And the better you have the ability to focus all of your attention on anything you want, in the present moment, the less you can hear that want voice of the ego that's trying to create illusions about the future or the past that don't exist. You're in the present moment. And if you just focus all the bandwidth of your attention on that present moment, then everything's okay. At the end of the day, you can maintain your center under distress. And I think another great example to bring up here is the cold showers, because so many people don't like to be uncomfortable. And I always say to my clients, get comfortable being uncomfortable. That's where the growth is that edge of discomfort where you're like, oh, that's not necessarily a pleasurable sensate experience. But if you can detach from the positive and the negative and just tune into, is there information here? Like the light and the dark and the good and the bad and pain and pleasure, they're all stimulus. They're all different flavors of ice cream. So try them all and learn from them which ones you like and which ones you don't. And one of the women from the group, actually, we were talking about cold plunging, and she had asked, what are the benefits that I've noticed from regular cold plunging? And I said, to maintain composure under duress. And I said, I used my arm as the example. When I broke my arm, this is cold. This is just cold. It's just pain. It's just a stimulus that's sensational that I'm experiencing, but this too shall pass. I am not that. It's just a stimulus. It's just cold. It's just pain, and it's here, and it's not going to go anywhere. The cold's always going to be cold. Pain is always going to hurt, but the relationship you have to it can change. And so that's where I was feeling the pain, of course, the whole time, but I was able to remove myself from identifying with the pain and focus my attention rather on my breath and just awareness of my body, constantly body scanning, breathing. Where's my tension? Am I holding on to this, whatever it is? So it's just having and that's, a testament to the work works. If you can focus your attention, even when you've got a broken arm in a foreign country, then, it just is a testament there, because I didn't waver. I just had full trust. And the synchronicities of the experience were crazy too. We were at the Sacred Valley Retreat Center the day prior doing a painting workshop. I ended up painting this angel. There's a quote by Michelangelo: I saw an angel in the marble, so I set to carving to set it free, something of that nature, where you see the end result. It's not there yet, but you can see it in your mind's eye, and you put your body to work creating it over space-time until you have the end result that you always saw in your mind's eye. And so I painted that. And then the next day, the break, I just maintained composure. I knew it was broke immediately when we hit. I was going too fast around a corner, way too fast, passing everybody, and I hit a corner, and the four-wheeler started to drift out, hit a little berm ditch kind of thing, and the force of the bike stopping and my inertia moving forward with my hand still on the handlebar broke my radius in 3 places, pretty gnarly. And then I flipped over the bike and rolled. But I knew immediately when it broke, I could feel the pop in my bone. And I've actually broken the same arm on the other side 20 years ago, same surgery and everything, which is hilarious. Wow. But
you had to balance it out, bro.
Yeah, I got the same scar now on both sides. But yeah, it was just an hour and a half bumpy ride. The ride was rough, going back in on the dirt roads to the hospital. And the driver didn't speak English, and he recommended that we go to a different place. He was like, Clinica. And we were like, no, Hospital Regional. And he kept saying Clinica. And finally, hour and a half drive in, eventually Brandon's like, okay, let's go to the Clinica. And sure enough, we get there, it's empty. They put me in a room right away, like a suite with an extra bed and a window. And they, totally took care of me, put my name at the front of the list, got me booked for a surgery right away the next day. And then I actually had travel insurance, and Brandon and I were like talking about this originally, but I wasn't, I just missed the memo. It was my first time getting travel insurance. I didn't know it covered accidents. I thought it was just like if your luggage goes missing or something, or you have to change a flight. I didn't know it was actually medical insurance that it would also cover. And sure enough, I was like one of the only people to get travel insurance on the trip, and they covered the entire surgery. So,
wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, they covered the stay at Samadhi. They covered the surgery. They covered my flight back. I mean, the full expenses paid. And so, on our way out of the hospital, we're in the clinic checking out, and there's a big painting of Archangel Michael on the wall, 6 foot high painting. And me and Brandon just look at each other and we smile, like, okay, like for considering breaking the arm in the foreign country, and the mind automatically goes, oh, it was the best experience it could have been. I mean, it was, other than the pain, I was floated from room to room. I was so pampered and taken care of, considering we were in downtown Cusco, random tourist from America in a foreign hospital, like everything went smooth. You know, the pain was super intense after surgery, super intense for like 3 days. And we were at altitude, so they couldn't give me enough painkillers
Hmm.
for me to not feel the pain. And so it was about every 4 hours, the painkillers would wear off, and they couldn't dose me for another 2 hours till 6 hours. And we were talking with Brandon's dad, like trying to talk to them, and they were like, "No, we can't." I'm like, "I'm a large human. I need more painkillers." And man, that was crazy, James. Like the first day post surgery, and then the 2 days after, when the painkillers would wear off, I would just have to lay as still as I could and just focus on my breath, and just like the pain was just like white hot fire, man. I was just getting this nerve pain. It was unbelievable how painful it was. Most painful thing I've ever experienced in my life. And it was just like, that was truly like, can I really hold the line? Can I really hold the frequency? Can I really maintain composure in this moment when I just have to sit here with this pain for an extended period of time, and there's nothing I can do about it, just total surrender and acceptance. That was super challenging because it was so painful. But day after day after day, it's just 1% better, 1%
Yeah.
better. And I'm
Yeah.
4 weeks out as of like 2 days ago.
So I hear that and I'm like drawing reference to the things that I've experienced that, are on a similar plane. One is my pec surgery where my pec muscle detached from my my bone. And they had to put that together. That was super painful. And they gave me pain meds and I didn't take any because I just didn't want to put any of that in my body. So I had to really endure the healing of all of that natural.
Mm.
Um, so breath for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I can't even remember what I was thinking. I don't even know if I was thinking anything aside from I'm not taking medication. So I just got to figure this out.
Mm-hmm.
And then another thing that I think about is my 61-mile walk and my 78-mile walk around Las Vegas in 26 hours. And the pain that my body was feeling and how many times I wanted to quit. And it was cold, it was raining, it was freezing temperatures. I couldn't feel my legs. I'm getting shooting pains up my back, and I'm like, I'm finishing. And water starts forming in my knee, and I just keep one step at a time. And people are just like, why do you even put your body through that? And I'm like, because I learn the most about myself when I'm in those situations. And that's not a call to go injure yourself on purpose just to learn, but it's how far can you go
Mm-hmm.
without jeopardizing your health or your life to stretch you mentally, emotionally, spiritually, so that you have a higher threshold for uncertainty. And life is filled with uncertainty. Every day is countless situations that can happen to you. And to your point of holding the center, you don't know how to do that unless you're aware when you're not in your center
Mm-hmm.
and have tools, a toolbox to help you get back to that center. And so breath for sure is definitely one of those. Is there a specific way that you breathe that those listening can really utilize, whether it's at work under a stressful deadline, they're going through a breakup or a divorce, they're processing a death of a loved one, or they're injured themselves? What would you say are some strategies around breath or anything else that they can really tap into in those moments?
So good. So good. And the first thing that I would say, just as from the conceptual perspective, is breath is an easy objective marker that helps you focus your attention. But really what we're doing is we're flexing the mind muscle more than we are flexing the breath muscle or the yoga posture muscle or the walking muscle. It's not about the thing that you do that helps you focus your attention. It's about the focusing of the attention. But the breath just happens to be one of the easiest. It's free, you breathe already anyway, so it's like the most realistic one that I have also personally, which is really common in meditation, because you're just sitting there and you're doing nothing but breathing. So breathing is like the one thing that you can focus your attention on quite easily. And so it's a one that's used a lot in meditation, as far as like the very beginning stages of meditation, of teaching how to focus your attention. The breath is like the natural starting point. The way that you breathe is less important, as more so following some kind of pattern that allows your mind to kind of focus on it, but not focus on it. It creates the kind of recognition for the subconscious mind, for the body to recognize the pattern and focus on the pattern, like counting sheep. But it's not actually per se about the pattern itself. You're kind of like hypnotizing yourself. And in yoga, you would call it like mantra or mudra. You're repeating something over and over in a cyclical fashion, like a sun salutation. So that way you're actually able to kind of like automatically process and perform the activity without, at a point later, the goal is to release attention from the thing that you're focusing your attention on as well, and focus on nothing as something, nothing is a thing. So that is kind of the scaffolding for the process of meditation, which is literally the eight limbs of yoga, Ashtanga yoga, the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, an OG that wrote like one of the first books on yoga. And it's so good. And it's very, there's a lot of interpretations, and it's written in Sanskrit. So I don't recommend going out and reading it if you've never read a book on yoga. It might be a little dense, but it's beautiful. Like it's a perfect example of the pathway to quote unquote self-realization or dissolution of self, in the way where you're becoming oneness with all that is. So there's a process, a step-by-step formula, like Kriya Yoga for me, the science of self-realization, as Yogananda Paramahansa would call it. It's a scientific formula, a step-by-step process. And that basically the eight limbs, that 8-step process. Step one is the things to do these things to be clean and strong and healthy and whole. And then the things not to do, don't do these things that are, not good to the harmony of the way of the natural order of things. Number 3 is pranayama, and asana is number 4. So breath and movement. Asana is postures, pranayama is cultivating breath, a loose translation. So these are the tools and the steps to get you to that place of flow, of centered composure. Step 5 is withdrawal of the senses. So after you've focused on the breath, after you've focused on the movement, then at a point you focus on stillness or nothingness. And then the withdrawal of the senses brings you to the state of meditation versus the active meditation, where meditation isn't actually something that you do. One pointed focus, the 6th limb, is what you do. It's where you put your focus and your energy after you withdraw your senses. You put it on nothing, right? After you've mastered the practice of putting it on something, then you put it on nothing. And then as a result, you dissolve the self, you become flow, like so many parables that we use nowadays of like getting in the zone. A lot of it's all flow state related. Like you don't try to get into the flow, like I'm gonna flow now, flow, like it's not like that. It's just a natural process. And if you've done the work, your likelihood of getting into that state is better, easier, more frequent, longer lasting, and so on. And then the result of being in flow is you become one, samadhi, you become one with all. So the 8 limbs of yoga is really like that 8-step process of like, here's the practices, the tools, and the skills of presence to bring you into that state. But for the breath, coming back around, the easiest thing to do is just focus. I call it the 4-part breath. Wherever you are, you can do this right now. Focus on the 4 phases of your breath. So there's the inhale phase, the pause at the top of the inhale when the lungs are full before you start exhaling. Then there's the exhale, and then there's the pause after the exhale when the lungs are empty before you take your next inhale. And so it's almost like a rectangle or an oval kind of shape, where as you can use your mind to kind of focus on the breath, where when you inhale, you're coming up and then you're pausing exhaling, coming down, pausing, and finishing your loop. So the easiest count that I start with people, it's called the 4-part breath. So you're just thinking, okay, I'm going to put some conscious attention. I'm going to focus my awareness on each phase of the breath when I'm breathing it. And so the easiest way to do this is to add a count to the breath. So count for a specific number of seconds, the inhale, the pause, the exhale, and the pause, and then repeat that pattern over and over. I'm sure you're familiar, James, with the Heart Math Institute. They have a beautiful little acronym called breathe or breath. No, breathe rhythmically and evenly and through the heart every day. That's there. And it's just really just create, and they give a lot of scientific backing as to why. But the idea is you want to create a calm, smooth, rhythmic tempo or a pattern that your subconscious mind can recognize and thus become familiar with, comfortable with, safe with, and allow the system to down regulate and relax. And so I teach a 2-to-1 ratio of the breathing versus the holding. So you would inhale for 2 seconds, hold for 1 at the top, exhale for 2 seconds, hold for 1 at the bottom. If that breath feels a little shallow and you could get a bigger, deeper breath into your belly and fill up the lungs more, then try a 4-2-4-2, where you inhale for 4 seconds, you hold for 2, you exhale for 4, and you hold that exhale for 2. You can also do a 6-3 or an 8-4 as you become more advanced, and you can take longer breaths and hold your breath longer. You're able to drop into even deeper states of meditation or concentration, or, that flow state, because you're continuing to expand the vessel, continuing to fill it with more oxygen. So just something like that, that's like, you can do that. That is a practice of presence where you have to stop what you're doing on the outside and focus on 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, or otherwise you'll lose your rhythm, you'll lose your count. Right. And that's a 12-second breath. So 5 breaths at that pace, 4-2-4-2 would be 1 minute. 25 breaths is 5 minutes. So it's something, you can get, and this is a research study. Aubrey Marcus cited this. I thought it was great. Just 6 breaths, 6 deep belly breaths can fully disengage the sympathetic nervous system and engage the parasympathetic nervous system. So just 1 minute of breathing can, if you're like, I'm freaking out, work, stress, lover, dog, child, whatever, gym workouts are sympathetically stressful. You want to optimize your performance, focus on conscious breathing during your sets. You'll recover faster during the workout. You'll be able to do more force output. You'll be able to recover after the workout more because you're not as sympathetically charged. So down regulating, activating the rest and digest system allows you to repair faster and better. So there's so much there, right, just by focusing on the counting of your breath, let alone what nostril or in the mouth, out the mouth, 40 breaths, whatever, 1 minute in and out through the nose, 4-part breath. Just that can have like significant benefit. And that was just the mantra. Like you said, the breath, same thing. When you're in pain, you don't even really know what you're thinking. You're trying not to think. You're trying not to think about the pain. So if you focus on the breath count, that's your anchor.
Yeah. I love that. So a lot there. I was reading an article about Dr. William James, who is like the grandfather of psychology, early 1900s. And one of the things that he mentioned was that when the mind and the heart, let's say the emotional, the intellect and the emotion are in conflict, emotion will always win. I thought that was really beautifully stated, because we can know what to do. And when we are in a situation where we feel the opposite, that feeling is going to guide us if we're not trained in knowing what's going on. And so, you're going through your day and something happens, a trigger happens, someone says something to you, you're in an environment that causes you to think about something from your past, and now you are emotionally compromised, or you're in the emotional stream. Thoughts start coming back to you, past situations that you start building a story, a narrative in your head, and pretty soon you're back in the past, not here in the moment. This breathing technique can pause that situation. It can slow down that experience long enough for the person in the carriage to whisper to the rider, this is not serving you. This is an opportunity for you to step into another version of you. And that pause mixed with that self-talk can be the catalyst for a new decision that leads to a new result, that leads to a new identity, that leads to a new lifestyle. So as you're listening to this, really think about where in your life are you operating not in an optimal state, or you're off-centered, or every time you talk to that friend, you get triggered, or every time you find yourself in X situation, you are not feeling the way that you want to, and really start thinking through that process in advance so that when you find yourself in that situation again, you don't have to go down that emotional turmoil downward spiral. You can start rewiring how you operate in those situations. John, do you want to add anything to that?
No, man, that was so good. That was a great touching point, because that's really the whole aspect of the skills and the tools. Everything right there is all of them bring you into coherence. Coherence is when the mind and the heart synchronize. And I think just that key point to constantly hammer, this is something I teach my clients, so worth saying, is the body is the bridge. Like if you're up in your head and you're thinking too much, bring your attention down into your body. If you're too much in your heart and too much, you're like overly fixated on emotions, emotionally reactive, bring it back into the body. The body is that perfect bridge between the head and the heart that can allow those two disrupted patterns to synchronize and start playing the same note together. And instead of that off beat, there's the breath. It's literally the breath in the body is what syncs up the heart and the mind and creates that coherence. And that is so critical to know that you can regulate that state in literally 1 minute and reset the coherence and get the parasympathetic state back online and come back into the body and just breathe. And then go, okay, what do I feel in my body? What do I feel in my gut? What do I feel? Tune into that and use that. I love the analogy of your body is like a compass. When you're like off the path a little bit, you'll probably feel it in your body. And the more you're presently aware of how you feel in your body by doing the work, doing the practices, you can feel an restrictive, closed off, step back, this isn't right. Or that opening, expanding, inspired, excited, yes, that full body yes. I love the phrase, if it's not a full body yes, it's a full body no. And just being able to listen to that and use the body as the compass, and the breath is what will help bring you back into that center point where you can become aware of and tune into that sensitivity that is basically, if you look at it going back to the river analogy, it's your five senses telling you where the rocks and the logs and the open parts of the stream are. And that's what intuition is to me, is really the meta-analysis of the other five senses throughout the time you've spent within this human experience. It's the sum total of your memory of the five senses, of the five horses. And that sixth sense is the accumulation of, and kind of like reflection and understanding, the synthesis of all that data that will help you make that next moving forward. Like wisdom in that way is just the accumulation of data and like processing probabilities at superhuman speed. We call it intuition, but it's just data that we're processing from our environment at all times. And the more you can tune into that, the more you're being guided every step of the way. If you can tune in and listen to that feeling, and that's the breath is the key to do that.
So you're making me think of something, and then I want to say that, and then I also want to come back to it's going to come back to me. I know it. We'll start with the first part. The inputs, right? The senses, the accumulation of the data received through your five senses that creates a pattern recognition awareness inside of you that can help you make decisions faster, more aligned decisions, and you don't have to think as much. That right there is why I do so many different things. And that doesn't mean that in my profession, I'm I have 20 things going on at once, because I think that's not a good idea. What I mean by it is, like, in different areas of my life, I'm doing different things. For
Mm-hmm.
example, right now, Amanda and I are taking salsa lessons.
Mm-hmm.
And we're learning how to dance. We're learning rhythm. We're learning leading and following. We're learning how to, with pressure, I can guide her in different directions. And all those subtleties, all that new data
Mm-hmm.
can bridge gaps in other areas that you don't think would be bridged.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how can I take the pacing and the leading and apply that to my business? How can I take the steps and the timing and the rhythm to pace my business and my energy, right? Or cooking classes, spices,
Mm-hmm.
measurements, creative flair. How can I bring some of that zestiness that I add to my food into my relationships? What pinch of salt can I add to the conversation that makes it more tasty,
Mm-hmm.
or spicy, or juicy, right? Like, all these things, everything that you do in your life is an experiment. And the more fun you have, the more adventurous you are, the more you open up centers in your mind and in your body and in your heart that can cross pollinate with other things that you've established that you never would think would connect. But until you're introduced, until you have the courage to step outside of what you know, that's where the magic is, because now you can start collaborating, co-creating, and mixing. But if you're always doing the same thing, it gets stale. It's like listening to the same song over and over and over. No matter how good the song is, it's gonna get old.
Mm-hmm.
You need some new rhythm. You need a new instrument. Maybe you go a cappella rather than instruments, or you add a cowbell, or whatever it is, right? Like, that's what I think about when you say that.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because I actually had a thought that I wanted to share for this podcast come to me yesterday in reflection in the shower. Massive download for ideas in the shower always. And
Always.
I was just as we reflect on, like, what are the reflections of Peru? And just one of them that had come to me was, travel is so rich. It is so information, nutrient rich. It is so novelty, neurogenesis. Joe Dispenza talks a lot about this, just that conversation. Exactly. You said it so well, of new experiences create new synapses in the brain and new networks. That I literally had this vision in the shower of two roots from like a tree coming together and like spiraling together, of two neuronal networks, two different ideas that then synergize into one larger combined idea that then combines with this, three ideas, and these two ideas make this, and that's constantly life, is like continuing to converge on new ideas based on information gathered from old ones. I think it's Jim Rohn. He says every new skill you learn builds on every old skill you know. And
yes.
I just feel that so strongly coming back. I went to Washington for a wedding trip in January of 2020, one of these last couple of years. That's the only travel I've done in 3 years. And so that one wasn't very novelty rich. I went back to the same place, saw the same people, did a lot of the same things. It wasn't really anything like a new experience that is like so rich. And this was, a month. I was there a month, I stayed an extra week and a half after the 2 weeks. So coming back, so many lessons, so much reintegration and reflection. And it's something that I noticed, which is why I came to the conclusion of travel is so necessary in the showers, because it took a while. I'm nursing a broken arm. Give me a break here. But it took me a bit to get back in the flow, coming back into January and the new year, and business. I love business. I'm, as you are as well, just like a super passionate person about learning and expansion and growth. And business is one of the greatest challenges that elicits that growth
100%.
response in you, because you're always learning, you're always growing. You'll never figure it all out. There's way too much. So that's the beauty of it, is it's when you can get over the ego of like, God, I suck at everything. It's like, God, look how much I can learn. Look, and that's the drug that you chase. And so with business, it's a really great opportunity to continue to push those boundaries and learn and grow. But inspiration and artistic expression, creativity are so key to the expression of your human being and the human experience that you're having. But your business is a reflection of you. And so bringing your creative expression through your business is actually what's going to resonate with people, because it's relatable. And then you're going to have a greater, impact in the world, because you're actually creating art instead of, a business plan or something, in that sense, where it's not mind and dry. It's got all that personality to it. And travel, new experiences elicit new perspectives that then make you think in a new creative way, that then coming back into the business just is something that I'd reflected on. Like, I just, over this last weekend, the gears turned back on. Like, I'm getting function back in my arm. Like, I can bathe myself with two hands and like do things now with this left hand. Like, it's coming along after 4 weeks. I can do quite a bit. It's healing quite well. So I'm actually now stepping back into the business role and starting to pick things back up. And all these new ideas have, without any effort, they just, because I've been percolating on the business, I took the month of December off. All those ideas have just been chilling and waiting. And then all these new perspectives coming back in the door of like, okay, what's on the war room wall to work on today? And it's like all these new ideas coming through that I never had thought of in November or December, that are like perfect natural progressions of where's I had lost momentum, is like the slowing down. And then the travel was a natural boost of inspiration, fuel to the vehicle, that like, oh, now these ideas, and I'm like, oh, I'd never thought of that a month ago, but that's like obviously the next most logical progression for this aspect of my business. And I'm excited about it, So it's like, then you're going to actually do it. So just the aspect of travel itself, to seek new experiences in looking to create new perspectives and new ideas and literally new neurons in your brain that are connecting and making you bigger and smarter. That is fascinating to me. And just one last little point to tie back into the motor learning aspect of it, I call it movement literacy with my clients, because movement is a language that we never really get taught, but we're actually comprehending way more from somebody through their movement than we are actually through their words, because you can lie with your words, but it's much harder to deceive with your behavior, with your body actions, evolution, the eyes. It's scanning on that. People are always checking to test your BS meter. That's why video is so powerful now, because you can actually engage energetically with the person you're talking to, because you can associate the emotions they're experiencing in that real-time moment as they're expressing them. So through the mirror neuron system, you can get that person, you can feel that person with the expression that they're portraying to you visually. So the video is so important, but just all of those aspects of learning, motor learning, tied to movement, the movement of another, the movement of yourself. This was something I thought was fascinating that just tied in here, is when you work on lateral movement, you actually improve. They've done studies on this. You improve lateral thinking. So you can take, like they use creative association. How many things can you use a paperclip for? Adults will be like, it's a paperclip, like 2 things, a kid will tell you, they'll like, well, how big is the paperclip? Can I bend it? And they'll come up with things that you would like, jewelry. You never would think a paperclip, but you can make an earring out of it, like being able to think outside the box in that way. Lateral thinking actually improves with lateral movement. And contralateral movement strengthens the corpus callosum, the midway, area of the brain that connects the 2 hemispheres. So you can actually communicate between both hemispheres more efficiently by performing different types of movement. Meditation also does that as well. So it's just so fascinating how these practices are actually linked and correlated to physical change, but the physical change is an expression of, a consequence of the change in thought. And it just goes to show, chicken before the egg, top-down systems and bottom-up systems. It's probably a combination of both, depending on what activity you're talking about. But the fact that they're intermittent, they're so intimately connected. It's not mind and body, it's body mind. It's literally one thing that has 2 different expressions. And just to realize like how intimately connected they are, and how movement and language and experience of the human mind actually develops the human body, and the developing the body develops the human mind. It's just fascinating.
Hell yeah. So basically, how many first times can you get in your lifetime? That's what I'm getting, right? Like just stack them, and be intentional about it, but like get yourself exposed. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that I've also been thinking about lately is when a lot of my clients will talk about how they want their morning routine to be so dialed in. They want every minute allocated to something because they just want to be super productive. And a lot of times what I see is when that happens, it's almost like it creates a superstition, or it creates another thing that has to go a certain way in order for you to be centered, which can also take you off center if you don't hit the things that you think you need to hit. And so I've been using this kind of analogy in my head is a tool versus a toolkit. And when you wake up and you're like, I got to get my meditation, and then I got to eat this way, and then I got to go get at least 45 minutes of exercise, then I got to do this and that, and then my day will start and I'll be good. It's like, well, what if that doesn't happen? Are you still going to be able to get things done? And so rather than it has to be a certain way, wake up and say, what does my body need? Mm-hmm. Maybe today I need meditation and not exercise. Maybe I need journaling because there's a lot of noise in my head mentally, and I just need to get it on paper and organize it. Maybe it's a conversation with a close friend. Rather than saying like it has to be X, Y, and Z, like just give yourself grace and flexibility to be able to adapt to what is needed in the moment. If you have a hammer and you're using everything with a hammer, you're going to be effective on some things, mostly ineffective on other things, because it's going to take tact for a smaller issue. You may need a screwdriver or an Allen wrench, or you may need pliers, and so having tools that you've cultivated over a span of time can be way more effective than being married to one thing. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on that?
100%. And I think something that's important to point out too, coming back to the conceptual perspective of the end goal of all of these practices and meditations is, and there's a great quote on this and I'm totally blanking on it, but I'll roughly paraphrase it something like, you only need the tools until you don't need them anymore.
like that.
At a point, the tools eventually are just that. They're just tools, but they're not the thing. Once you know the thing, you can get there oftentimes without the tools. And that ties into the quote that life becomes the meditation being a direct representation of one pointed focus in the present moment, always, every present moment, eternally, is that life becomes the practice, where it's not about the waking up and doing all the breath techniques and all the names, and it's all dressings, it's all dogma. At the end of the day, it's all just a finger pointing at the moon. It's not the actual moon. It's an opportunity for you to try things out. And like, you're in this human body, you might as well, and this is ultimately where it takes me with this. I always talk about this, is like with the flavors of ice cream and the different skills. There's, well, should I do Ulu, the Hawaiian dance spiritual method, or should I do Tai Chi, or should I do Qi Gong, or should I do yoga, or should I do, should I study Buddhism, or should I study Taoism, or all the things? Ultimately, it comes back to your human experience. What do you enjoy? Like what you said, what does my body need? I think is the first question to answer, and make sure that like you're functioning optimally, but then ultimately coming into what do I enjoy? Mm-hmm. Because it's all here, all the teachings, all the tools, everything. I was just listening to a video right before I went into ceremony in Iquitos. It's the morning of, I took a little video, and like the end of it, I almost posted it in the Warriors WhatsApp group, but it's just like, you have all the tools and all the techniques and all the support and all the resources, everything you need to fulfill every desire you have and like achieve your goals and, get to the end destination of your journey. All of it is here right now. And when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And when the student is truly ready, the teacher disappears. The tools disappear. Like it's just you and creator at that point. And so they're all just frameworks and references. And so
can we pause on that real quick? So when you're ready, the teacher appears. Mm-hmm. And when the student is ready, or when the student is graduated, or like, speak a little bit more about that, because I think that that's the piece that gets well, I've never heard someone say it, although I believe in it. I love that you've added that. And I just don't want that to get skipped over, because we can fall under the illusion that we like need the next thing, or we need the
Mhm.
next thing. And it's like that creates dependency rather than you becoming fully autonomous. And it doesn't mean that you'll never need help. It just means that you want to make sure that you're living on your terms, not somebody else's.
Yeah, I believe, just looking it up quickly, it's either Buddha or Lao Tzu. I believe it's Lao Tzu.
Sounds like a Lao Tzu.
But yeah, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. When the student is truly ready, the teacher will disappear. And that's the full actual quote. And typically that last line gets cut off, but like, it's just so key, right? Like, it's because, especially, you see this a lot in yoga, is my guru, this guy in
Right.
robes over here outside of myself that has the power that I don't have. It's
Mm-hmm.
giving away your power of choice and experience to somebody else, that, then creating comparison and contrast and duality, essentially. Another beautiful line that helps to make that last part a little more clear is, the great cosmic joke is two, or other. There is no other, there is no two, there is only one. And that is what the realization you come to when you're truly ready is, you realize there is no body outside of yourself, there is no teacher outside of you. You are the teacher, you are it, you are all of it, and connected to, you are the drop in the ocean and also the ocean in a drop. You are that, you are both, the classical paradox of the Tao. And
Yeah.
that line there, to me, is like, when the student is truly ready, he realizes that it all matters, but none of it matters. And it's like, it's whatever you want to experience. And so, what do you want? Because you can have anything you want, just want it. You just have to want it and be okay wanting it. I want a Ferrari. Don't feel guilty for that. Like, if you like Ferraris and you really want a Ferrari, then want it and ask for that, and focus on getting it, because you can create and you can have whatever you want. The only limitation is the ones that you impose upon yourself with your own mind. So the end of it, to me, is love and do as you will. I believe that's I can't remember who quoted that. As a man thinketh, James Allen, I
Yeah.
believe. Love and do as you will, or do what you love and love what you do. Like, ultimately, do what you enjoy, because none of it matters anyway. So you might as well enjoy the experience that you're on. But, to bring it back around to what we said earlier, don't be shy of the pain either, because pain is, Paul Chek, one of my great teachers, he calls it the pain teacher. Pain is, there's so many lessons and so much
One of the
perspective.
best.
It's one of the best teachers. Don't be shy of that. When it comes, embrace it. This is a quick story about Lahiri Mahashai. He's of the Kriya Yoga lineage that we've talked about, with Yogananda up to Babaji. Lahiri Mahashai, I believe in the 1800s, was visited by a demigod, if you will. He's called an avatar, basically an immortal that takes form in a human body that never dies, and he just never ages. He's this ageless avatar. He's this demigod. Babaji visited Lahiri Mahashai and taught him this yoga technique called Kriya Yoga, that is an old technique that helps you become aware of yourself, focus your concentration, and become one with all, in that sense. And Lahiri Mahashai took these practices and these skills. I love how this is coming back around, because what are those practical things that we can take away to help us on the journey to mastery, to become truly an ascended master, which is, if they can do it, we can do it, right? There's no difference between you and Jesus. He was just a dude that did what he loved and was dedicated to his path, and came to different, perspectives, awarenesses of consciousness, and unity between all things. Buddha, Rumi, all of these guys, are talking the same language, these enlightened beings, these ascended masters. And the practices allow you to be more aware of the environment, of your body, of all these subtle things. You become more of a Jedi, ultimately. And there's this beautiful story of Lahiri Mahashai walking with one of his students. I can't remember if I told you this or not, And he's just in conversation with a student. They're walking down an alleyway, and he looks over to a student and he says, "Hey, can you rip off a little bit of rag from your robe?" And they walk, and he goes, "What?" And like one more step later, this brick like falls off of the roof and comes down and lands on Lahiri's foot and cuts his foot. And the student goes, "Holy shit, how did you do that?" You know, like why did, and how did you know that was going to fall? And why did you let it hit you anyway if you knew beforehand it was going to fall? And he looks at his student and he says, "If I were to have avoided that pain from that experience, it would have come back at a later time, karma, cause and effect, to teach me the lesson I needed to learn somehow else, but it would have delayed the effect. So it would have grown in momentum to where when it happened next time, it could have been a lot worse. I could have gotten seriously injured." So the lesson was twofold in the sense that don't avoid or hesitate or shy away from pain in the present moment, even if you know you're going to experience it, because there's likely information, some kind of lesson there for you. But also, if you do delay it, it likely is going to come back around at a greater intensity, and you're going to have to learn that lesson anyway. So you might as well just suck it up, focus on your breath, breathe through it, and learn the lesson.
Damn. Love that. Thank you, bro. I appreciate you. As we wind down here, just tell everyone where's the best place to find you, how they get involved with what you're doing, and all that you have coming up this year.
Yeah, of course. I am. You can find me at kfitnesspro.com. It's my website. Kempf Fitness Professional is my business name. You can find me all over social media. And yeah, I am taking clients through health and fitness programs. I do 12-week coaching programs and work with clients one-on-one and in a group setting. And it's all online through an app, and I've got a community platform. So just go to kfitnesspro.com and you can book a free consultation there in my schedule. You'll find my calendar, book in, and sit down for a free conversation with me. I can tell you more about training, get a little bit about your goals and your obstacles, and see if I can't help at least point some fingers for you to help you progress down the path of improving your health, improving your fitness, your mobility, your performance, using movement and nutrition and yoga, meditation, and mindfulness.
Love it. Yeah, guys, very few people know the craft like John does. So definitely take advantage of checking him out, getting involved with what he's doing, and see how deep you can take your practice. And ultimately, that's all we're doing, is seeing how deep we can go. The analogy that I love is when you look at really, really tall trees, the only way they can get to that height is if they have deep root structures.
Mm.
So the best of the best have the depth so that they can support the heights. And you want to go high, you got to go deep, right? And that's scary. It's painful. It takes a while, but it's worth it. And when you can be there, you're rooted in your own convictions, your own truths. And that's when you can really start creating miracles in your life, because you're creating it from you. You're living on your terms. And what's more freeing than knowing that you think for you, and not dependent on what everyone else thinks of you or what societal expectations are placed upon you. You can break free of all that and operate in your own truth. So, John, thank you for being on the podcast, brother. Any last minute words that you want to say that you think that are coming through before we end it?
Yeah, thank you for asking, because what you just said was so good. Freedom. Freedom in yoga, they call this moksha. It means liberation. And when you can free yourself from your own mind, there's a great quote: the mind makes a wonderful servant and a poor master. When you can free yourself from your mind and realize you are not that, through these practices of presence and becoming awareness itself that can observe the body, can observe the mind, can observe thoughts, and you really tune into that power of presence, you become free. And freedom, guys, like true sovereignty over your own self, because you have to go to bed at night with you every night. And so you're only a slave to your own mind. And this is literally the step-by-step process to becoming free of your own mind. Moksha, liberation, that's the goal of yoga, is to become free. And my last piece on that. So the work works and you can really become free and create your own life. And that's beautiful. That's the goal. Because then the fun really begins. That's when the game actually starts, right? People think enlightenment's the end. Enlightenment is the beginning, when you're like, oh my God, this is all me and I can do anything I want. Let's go. But the path to getting there, just one thing I always say is the teachings are in the body. Embody the teachings. I don't have to be the one that teaches it to you. You are your own guru. Listen to your heart. You have all the answers already. And if you tune into your body by focusing the attention of your mind on the present moment, on the sensations that are arising and falling in the breath, in the skin, in the heart, everything, and all the movements of the body, if you can focus on the body, the teachings are in you. The cellular DNA that you have holds the memory of your ancestral line. A lot of people that have had a lot of these thoughts and contemplated a lot of things and done great things, all of that is inside of you. All the wisdom, all the teachings are in your body. You just have to turn the key to unlock the gifts that are already within you. The teachings are in the body. Embody the teachings, which just means chop wood, carry water, do the work. The work works. Find a practice that you enjoy and just do it every day as a little science experiment for a year, 2 years, 3 years, and just see what happens. Because why not? You're enjoying it anyway. If you don't learn anything other than the fact that you like to do something, that may have some benefit to your life, but just do the work. It's inside of you. Tune into your body and enjoy the ride.
Let's go. I'll see you guys next time. And until then, be your own 1%, live in your truth, and have a great day, guys.